All right, today we're going to dig into the incredible story of Vardzia. And I mean that literally. It's an entire city that wasn't built but carved right out of the side of a volcano in the nation of Georgia. So yeah, let's dig in.
This quote just nails it. It really captures the whole spirit of Vardzia. This wasn't just, a place where people lived. It was this incredible marvel of both geology and history. A city literally born from volcanic rock and human will, but always under threat from both the shaking earth and invading empires.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at this idea of a city in negative space. Then, the special kind of stone that made it all possible. We'll cover its shift from a fortress to a holy city, what life was actually like inside the rock, and finally, its tragic ruin and eventual rediscovery.
Okay, first up, a city in negative space. And the first thing you have to understand is that Vardzia was so much more than just a bunch of caves. No, this was a fully planned, massive complex that was a fortress, a city, and a royal monastery, all rolled into one. I mean, the scale here is just mind-boggling. Seriously, try to picture a skyscraper, but instead of going up, it's laid on its side and carved straight into a cliff face, 19 stories deep. At its peak, this was a totally living, breathing city, a vertical metropolis tucked away inside the rock.
So the big question is, right, how on earth was something this insane even possible back in the 12th century? Well, the answer isn't just about the people. It's in the stone itself. It all comes down to the unique geology of this specific spot.
So the builders found what you could call the perfect Goldilocks material. It's this stuff called weakly welded tuff. Basically, it's volcanic rock that was just right, soft enough that workers could carve it out with hand tools, simple picks and chisels, but at the same time, it was strong enough to hold up the massive weight of a 19-story complex. Absolutely perfect.
And you really see how special this rock was when you look just a few kilometers down the valley. The tuff there was completely different. It was non-welded, which means it was way too soft and crumbly. You couldn't build anything complex out of it. So the builders of Vardzia, they knew exactly what they were looking for. They picked their spot with some serious geological smarts. But, and this is a big but, this perfect stone came with a huge price. Vardzia was built in a really dangerous place. There's an active fault line running right through there. The entire chunk of cliff is actually slowly sinking. And the rock itself had all these internal cracks, creating these natural weak spots. From the very beginning, this was a city living on a knife's edge. So that leads to the next question. Why build it here at all? Well, its purpose really evolved over time, shaped by two very powerful rulers, a father and a daughter who had pretty different ideas for what this place should be. Okay, so it started with King Giorgi III. For him, Vardzia was all business, a military project. It was meant to be a hidden fortress, a place to launch surprise attacks on invaders. But then, his daughter, the famous Queen Tamar, came to power, and she completely changed the game. She saw something more. She expanded it, turning it into this magnificent royal monastery and a center for culture. She's the one who had its spiritual heart, the incredible Church of the Dormition carved out. And later on, when the Mongols invaded, Vardzia served both purposes. It became a critical safe haven for up to 20,000 refugees.
And there's this fantastic legend that really ties the queen to this place. It's probably just a story, but they say the name Vardzia came from Queen Tamar herself. When she was just a kid, she was exploring the first few caves, got lost, and called out to her uncle Vardzia, which means, "I am here, uncle." It's kind of perfect, right? It captures the whole idea of the city, this hidden thing that suddenly announces its presence.
All right, let's head inside. What was it actually like to live in this city inside a cliff? Well, let me tell you, its design was an absolute masterpiece of engineering and urban planning.
Yeah, this wasn't just a random jumble of caves. Nope. The city was carefully planned out with different zones. You had the main residential area in the east, another one in the west, and right in the middle, a central hub for all the public spaces and, of course, the main church.
And the way they designed it for defense was pure genius. For starters, the main ways in were totally hidden from anyone down in the valley. And once you were inside, the stairways were super narrow and steep, creating these perfect choke points where just a few defenders could stop an entire army. With something like 6,000 rooms all connected, the whole place worked like a giant human anthill, letting people move around quickly and safely, completely out of sight.
So how do you keep thousands of people alive inside a rock? The answer is water, and their solution was incredible. The engineers built a 3.5-kilometer aqueduct out of ceramic pipes. Get this, it brought in 166,000 liters of fresh water every single day from a village way up on the plateau.
And that water wasn't just for drinking. It all flowed into this gigantic reservoir that they carved deep inside the mountain. This thing could hold more than 500,000 liters of water. That was their insurance policy, a huge strategic reserve to make sure the city could survive a long siege even if an enemy managed to cut off their main water supply.
But life in Vardzia wasn't all about defense and survival. It was about culture, too. Archaeologists have found 25 different wine cellars inside the city. And in them, they found 185 of these huge traditional clay pots called klavi buried in the floor. We're talking about industrial-scale winemaking, which has always been a huge part of Georgian culture.
And it didn't stop with the wine, either. To be truly self-sufficient, they had irrigated terraces down below for farming. They had their own pharmacy. You can still see the little shelves carved out from medicine jars. They had a big bakery and even a forge for blacksmithing. Vardzia was truly a complete, self-contained world.
But for all its brilliance, the golden age of Vardzia was tragically short. Now we have to talk about the disaster that literally shattered this city of stone, and the long, long road to rediscovery.
So in the year 1283, less than 100 years after it was finished, a massive earthquake, maybe a magnitude 7.0, just ripped through the area. For a city built right on a fault line, full of all those natural weaknesses we talked about, well, this was the ultimate test. And it failed, catastrophically.
There's a quote that says the city was exposed like a dollhouse with its front wall removed, and that is chillingly accurate. The quake just sheared off the entire front of the cliff. All those hidden tunnels, the secret rooms, everything was just sliced open, exposed to the world. In a single moment, Vardzia's greatest asset, its secrecy, was gone forever.
After the earthquake wiped out about 2/3 of the city, Vardzia started a long, slow decline. In 1551, an invasion ended its life as a monastery with a brutal massacre of the monks. Then, for hundreds of years, it was basically abandoned, used by shepherds for their animals. It wasn't until the Soviet era that it was finally declared a protected site, and believe it or not, monks only returned to live there in 1988. And when you look at the numbers, you can really see the whole story. It went from an estimated 3,000 to 6,000 rooms down to only about 640 that we can even identify today. These numbers, the dates, they really just spell out what an incredible place this was and how much of it was lost.
So what we're left with today is this incredible paradox. Vardzia was a masterpiece of faith and engineering, but it was brought down by the very same ground it was carved from. And those tectonic forces, they're still active today, a constant threat to what's left. Which leaves us with this one big, important question. How do we preserve this fragile, incredible city of stone for generations to come?